From early childhood, I've harbored an insurmountable dread of flying. The idea of ascending into the air on a metallic bird seemed absurd and impossible to me. Every time friends suggested a journey or business trip by plane, I'd conjure up excuses or suddenly discover circumstances to avoid it. It's not that I didn't want to explore the world or broaden my horizons, but fear held such sway over me that it turned any flight opportunity into an absolute nightmare, and every time I saw planes soaring in the sky, my heart constricted with anxiety, and thoughts of flying conjured up dark images and dreadful scenarios. This fear became an inseparable part of my life, dictating my decisions and limiting my possibilities. But despite this fear, I had a family that always supported me. My wife, whom I met back in university, was always there, helping me cope with this fear. She understood my feelings and stood by me in every decision I made, and, of course, my children were a source of inspiration and strength for me. Seeing how they joyfully watched passing planes and dreamed of travels, I realized that I had to overcome my fear for them. My family was my wing, my beacon in the darkness of fear, helping me not to lose myself in it. After graduating from university, I found a job at a small local company specializing in software development. Working as a programmer allowed me to realize my potential in the field of information technology without leaving my city. I was in a comfort zone where I could develop and contribute without experiencing the discomfort or stress associated with the need to travel by plane. My position required creative thinking and teamwork. We were engaged in creating user interfaces and web applications for local enterprises and companies. It was a job that gave me satisfaction and the opportunity to contribute to the development of local business and infrastructure. Thanks to the team of professionals I worked with, I felt in my element. We were a cohesive team where everyone made their contribution and supported each other. Our work required high responsibility and accuracy, but I felt I could trust my colleagues, knowing they would always help in difficult times. Although my job didn't require travel outside the city, it provided me with the opportunity to grow and develop professionally without limiting my ambitions and possibilities. I was grateful that my profession allowed me to be close to my family and continue to overcome my fear of flying without losing the opportunity to succeed in my career. My wife, Emily, also works in the same company where I'm involved in software development. It was a coincidence that brought us even closer and strengthened our family ties. We met here back in university, and together we moved to this job after completing our studies. Working with my spouse turned out to be a surprisingly pleasant experience. We complemented each other, both professionally and personally. Our work allowed us to spend more time together, discuss common interests and goals, and support each other in difficult situations. Emily worked in the software testing department, and her insights and remarks were always a valuable source of information for me. We shared experiences, helped each other solve difficult tasks, and celebrated the successes of our team together. Our joint projects became a kind of test for our family well-being, but despite this, we strengthened our relationship and jointly overcame all difficulties. Working with a loved one gave our professional activities a special meaning and significance. We were grateful for the opportunity to work together and look in the same direction, striving for common goals and dreams. Our family was our support and inspiration, and working in the same place became a new stage in our shared life. Although Emily and I dreamed of children, our life was always full of challenges and unexpected twists and turns that somehow didn't give us the opportunity to realize this dream. Working in the information technology industry required a lot of time and energy from us, and sometimes it seemed that family happiness was being postponed for later. We were both caught up in our careers and work, striving for success and stability. Children were in our plans, but there always seemed to be something more urgent or important that postponed this crucial step indefinitely. Sometimes it felt like life was passing us by, and Emily and I together tried to find time to realize our dream of a family. But as the years went by, more and more circumstances seemed to conspire against us. In our hectic schedules, there wasn't much time left for ourselves, let alone raising children. We often discussed this issue, dreaming of a family and children, but each time something hindered us from moving forward decisively. Yet, despite all the difficulties, we continued to believe in our dream and hoped that someday it would come true. Children were a symbol of love and unity for us, and we were ready to overcome all obstacles to welcome them into our family. our parents always expressed hope that they would soon become grandparents, their eyes filled with warmth and joy as they talked about playing with grandchildren and teaching them everything they knew. Our meetings with Emily's and my parents often turned into serious discussions about our family's future. They supported us in our plans for children and shared their hopes and expectations. Their eyes sparkled with anticipation of the day when they would become grandparents. Despite our doubts about our ability to be parents, we knew that our parents would be there to help and support us. Their love and care were our support when Emily and I faced doubts and anxieties about our decision to become parents. Our domestic life with Emily was filled with warm moments and care. We both worked in the same company, which gave our weekdays a special color and meaning. Our days began with a welcoming kiss when we met each other at work and ended with discussing plans for the evening at home. My work in the company was related to data analytics, which required constant attention to detail and the ability to work with a large amount of information. I enthusiastically immersed myself in my projects, striving to achieve the best results and move our company forward. Emily also worked in this company, managing client relations. Her warm smile and friendliness made her a favorite among colleagues and clients. We often crossed paths in the office corridors, stealing moments for quick kisses or gentle smiles. After work, we returned home to enjoy the evening together. Our days could be filled with various activities, cooking dinner together, discussing our plans for the weekend, or simply spending cozy time on the couch, cuddled up under a blanket. Despite our similarities at work, we had our differences. For example, I loved sports and often spent time at the gym after work, striving to stay in shape. Emily preferred creative activities such as drawing or reading books, which gave her day a special charm and harmony. We both dreamed of having a family and children, but unfortunately, our desire for parenthood encountered some difficulties. Our days were sometimes filled with anxiety and disappointment when our attempts didn't yield the desired results. Nevertheless, we both continued to pursue our dream, supporting each other through tough times and rejoicing together in moments of success and joy. Our home was filled with love and hope, and we believed that sooner or later our dreams would become a reality. Once upon a time, I thought taxes were just a formality to be complied with to avoid trouble with the tax authorities, but how wrong I was. My troubles with tax payments began subtly, like a quiet stream that suddenly turned into a raging torrent. It all started with missing the deadline for filing my tax return. At the time, I was consumed with work and personal issues, and taxes seemed like the least of my worries. I thought I could afford to postpone this process a little. However, as it turned out, it was a big mistake. By the time I noticed the deadlines, it was already too late. The tax return was filed late, leading to unpleasant consequences. Penalties and interest started to accumulate, turning into a huge sum that I couldn't afford. I tried to explain my situation to the tax officials, hoping for understanding and leniency, but my pleas were in vain. The tax authority was relentless, and I was forced to pay fines and penalties, adding to the already significant amount of taxes owed. My financial troubles became the #1 topic in my life. I spent days and nights trying to find ways to deal with this situation. I sought help from financial consultants, turned to friends and family for advice, but all my efforts seemed futile. At some point, I even began to lose hope. These financial problems seemed endless, like a black hole swallowing up all my efforts and hopes. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of debts and fines, unable to find a way out of this situation. But eventually, I realized that giving up was not my style. I decided to take control of the situation and start acting. I developed an action plan that included making regular payments on debts, cutting expenses, and seeking additional sources of income. It was a difficult path, but I managed to overcome these difficulties. I found a side job to increase my income, cut expenses by eliminating unnecessary spending, and strictly adhered to my financial plan. With each passing day, I felt the situation improving. My debts gradually decreased, and I began to see light at the end of the tunnel. I learned to appreciate financial discipline and responsibility, which helped me overcome this crisis. In the end, my financial problems turned out to be an important lesson for me. They taught me to value every dollar, to be more responsible in financial matters, and always have reserves for unexpected circumstances. Our marriage began like a fairy tale. We were young, in love, and full of hope for a happy future together, but over time, as we delved into our life together, the first cracks began to show. Perhaps one of the main reasons was that we both had different ideas about how our vacations and travels should be spent. For me, vacation was an opportunity to relax, unwind, and explore new places. I always dreamed of adventures and excursions, of new experiences and encounters. My wife, however, saw vacation differently. She preferred a peaceful rest, without hustle and bustle. For her, vacation was a time to relax, to simply enjoy being in a new place, without the need to follow a strict schedule or engage in active leisure activities. It was precisely these differences in views on relaxation and travel that led to numerous conflicts and disagreements between us. We often argued about where to go and what to do during vacation. My suggestions for mountain hikes or long walks around the city caused her stress and misunderstanding, while her preferences included beach vacations and quiet strolls through shops. Each vacation became a trial for our relationship. We both felt dissatisfied and disappointed, which could affect our overall happiness. At some point, I even began to doubt the strength of our feelings for each other if we couldn't find a compromise on such a simple matter as vacation. But over time, we both realized the need to find a balance between our different preferences and interests. We started discussing our expectations and vacation needs, and tried to find compromises that would satisfy both of us. Gradually, we began to find common interests and hobbies that brought us both pleasure. We realized that vacation is not only a time for relaxation but also an opportunity to spend quality time together, enjoying each other's company. Now that we've learned to better understand and respect each other's interests, our vacations have become more enjoyable and harmonious. We cherish every moment together, creating unforgettable memories and strengthening our relationship. Our disagreements about vacation and travel were just a test that we overcame together. Now we know that it's important to find compromises and maintain open and honest communication to make our relationship even stronger and more resilient. Being lonely and not having real friends felt like a curse that was hard to accept. In my life, it always seemed like I couldn't connect with others. My phobias and fears made me vulnerable, and my reluctance to participate in social events and hang out with friends only intensified this feeling of isolation. I felt like I didn't fit into society, that my problems made me weak and unattractive to others. My fear of flying, for example, always puzzled my acquaintances. They couldn't understand why I couldn't just overcome my fear and enjoy traveling like they did. This often led to me being seen as weak and insecure. Many didn't hesitate to ridicule my phobias and fears, which only reinforced my sense of inadequacy. I felt like my condition was condemned and incomprehensible to most people around me. This negative experience only deepened my isolation and strengthened my desire to stay away from other people. I preferred to remain in solitude, where no one could judge me for my fears and weaknesses. Such self-isolation, of course, only exacerbated my situation, making me even more lonely and isolated. Without real friends, I often felt lost and insecure. I lacked the support and understanding that real friends could provide. I dreamed of finding at least one person who could accept me as I am and help me overcome my fears and phobias, but for a long time, such a friend didn't appear in my life. I continued to wander in solitude, without hope of change. It seemed to me that I was doomed to exist in this vicious circle of loneliness and fear, from which there was no way out. However, suddenly and unexpectedly, something changed. I met a person who not only understood my fears and phobias but also accepted me as I am. This person became my friend, my ally in the fight against loneliness and fear, and although our friendship is only beginning, I feel that it could be the beginning of a new chapter in my life. When I think back to my childhood, she, my future wife, always comes to mind. She was the one who noticed me when everyone else ignored me. We were like two soldiers standing against the world, which seemed incomprehensible and hostile. Our friendship began back in school, where we were in the same class. She was always the one who made me smile when the world seemed gray and dull. Her cheerful jokes and kind heart drew me to her, and I immediately felt that we were connected by something special. Often we spent time together, walking in the park or playing in the yard, but our true connection manifested when we embarked on our first trips together. There, far from the hustle and bustle of everyday life, we opened our hearts and souls to each other. Our trips were like journeys into a world of magic, where everything was possible. We explored new places, met interesting people, and shared dreams about the future. I felt that with her, I could be myself, without fear or doubt. With each of our adventures, we grew closer to each other, we shared joys and sorrows, laughed and cried together. Our trips became not just adventures but a testament to our strong and unwavering bond. When I met her gaze, I saw warmth and understanding that I had never experienced before. She was my support and my beacon of light in a dark world. I thanked every day for her presence in my life, bringing light and joy with her. We grew together, experiencing all the difficulties and trials that life threw our way. But our bond only strengthened with each new day. We weren't just friends, we were a single soul that found its reflection in each other, and when we finally realized that our feelings had grown into something more than just friendship, we understood that our adventure was just beginning. We decided to go through life together, hand in hand, ready to overcome all obstacles that would come our way. And today, as we reminisce about our childhood years, we are grateful for every moment we spent together. Our trips became not only adventures but also a symbol of our love and devotion to each other, and although time has passed, our feelings remain as strong and true as they were on the day we first met. I was shocked when I found out that I was awarded a business trip to Odessa. The first thought that crossed my mind was, how will I manage this if I'm so afraid of flying? Since childhood, I had a fear of heights and a fear of flying. As soon as I even looked at an airplane, my heart would start beating faster, and thousands of thoughts about disasters and accidents would flood my mind. Even the thought of having to board a plane filled me with panic and anxiety. But now, faced with the need to take this flight, I felt like a bird trapped in a cage. I wanted to run away, but I understood that it was inevitable. My job required it of me, and I couldn't afford to decline. My colleagues tried to support me, saying that everything would be fine, but for me, words of comfort sounded empty. They didn't understand what it was like to feel completely helpless in the face of your fears. I spent sleepless nights, imagining the worst-case scenarios that could happen during the flight. My imagination was richer than any horror movies, and I felt the fear gripping me stronger and stronger. But I understood that I needed to overcome my fear, or else I would miss out on this opportunity for career advancement. I tried to find ways to cope with it. I read books about aviation, listened to soothing music, and even sought help from specialists, but nothing could completely rid me of this feeling of horror that overwhelmed me at the thought of flying. The idea of flying on an airplane seemed like an insurmountable task to me, but I knew that I had to deal with it if I wanted to live a full life. I was willing to sacrifice my fears for my future and the future of my family. Each step towards this decision was a real challenge for me. I spent many days and nights, struggling with myself and my fears. In the end, my wife and I decided that we needed the help of a specialist. On the advice of friends, we went to a psychologist who helped us understand our emotions and taught us how to deal with our fears. After several counseling sessions, we gained new confidence. We realized that fears could be overcome if we learned to approach them correctly. We learned to use relaxation techniques and breathing exercises to control our fear and anxiety. When it was time to pack our bags and head to the airport for tickets, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, but I knew that I had to overcome my fears if I wanted to live a full life. My wife stood by my side, supporting me and believing in our shared future. We packed our things and headed to the airport. Each step towards the terminal felt surreal to me. I felt like I was in a daze, but at the same time, I was determined. When we finally reached the airline counter, it felt like there was a huge success on the horizon. We bought our tickets and sat down to wait for boarding. My heart was beating faster than ever, but I knew it was a small step towards overcoming my fear. As our plane took off, I could feel adrenaline rushing through my body, but I took a deep breath and focused on my breathing. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine myself on the ground, not in the air. Gradually, my fears started to fade into the background as I enjoyed the views outside the window. I felt the plane leave the ground and soar into the sky, and it was an incredible feeling of freedom. At the beginning of the flight, everything seemed normal. I sat in my seat, trying to focus on a book to distract myself from my fears. We were flying on schedule, clouds slowly drifting past the window, and I began to relax, thinking everything would go smoothly. But suddenly, something went wrong. The plane sharply began to lose altitude, and I felt my heart freeze with terror. Panic spread through the cabin. Passengers started screaming in fear and scrambling for oxygen masks. At that moment, my breathing became heavy and uncontrollable. I felt all my fears returning with double force, and I almost sank through the floor with horror. My wife grabbed my hand, trying to calm me down, but I was completely overwhelmed by what was happening. In my head, I kept thinking that this was the end, that I would never see my family again. I closed my eyes and tried to focus on my breathing, but fear still completely consumed me. When the plane suddenly began to lose altitude and shake, everything around me was engulfed in panic and chaos. My wife and I held each other's hands, involuntarily trying to find support in this moment of fear. Suddenly, a message from the pilot came over the intercom, saying they had serious engine problems and had to make an emergency landing. My heart stopped. An emergency landing? In water? It sounded like a nightmare, but I had to stay calm because right next to me was my family, my wife, and I had to be strong for her. The plane started to descend, and my tension only grew, and then, with noise and creaking, we landed on the surface of the lake. It was a moment of chaos and fear, but, to my relief, the plane landed without major injuries or casualties. Looking at the water outside the window made me realize how differently things could have turned out. Following the emergency landing, helicopters flew in to assist with the evacuation. We left the plane, filled with mixed feelings, gratitude for surviving, and concern about what could have happened. Although no one was physically injured, the consequences of this incident were deeply emotional. The psychological impact remained like a heavy burden on our shoulders, reminding us of the fragility of life and the uncertainty of the future. After that horrific incident in the air, when my wife and I narrowly escaped a real nightmare, we felt an urgent need for a change of scenery, and, as luck would have it, our work once again intervened in our lives, offering us a business trip to Odessa. At first, I had some concerns about another journey, but then I realized it could be a good opportunity to start afresh. My wife and I took this offer as a sign from fate and decided to seize the chance. After all, we still had a long way to go, and we couldn't let fear or worry hold us back. So, packing our things and clenching our fists, we set off on our journey. Before us unfolded a wonderful world of railways, winding through picturesque landscapes and past cozy villages. The trip was truly magical. We enjoyed the beauty of the landscapes outside the window, discussed our plans and dreams for the future, and finally felt that with each kilometer, we were moving away from the shadows of the past and towards a brighter future. Arriving in Odessa, we were struck by its beauty and charm. It was a city surrounded by the majestic Black Sea. With its vast expanses and turquoise waves, we stayed in a cozy hotel near the coast and began to explore this unique corner of Ukraine. Every day was filled with new discoveries and adventures. We wandered through the old streets of the city, enjoying the architecture and cultural heritage of Odessa, as well as spending time on beautiful beaches, bathed in warm sun and gentle sea breeze. Work didn't forget about us either. We participated in various conferences and seminars, made presentations, and met with business partners. Despite being a business trip, we found time for relaxation and tourism, savoring every moment in this wonderful city. The trip to Odessa became for us not only an opportunity for work but also a source of inspiration and new experiences. We returned home enriched with experience and emotions, ready to take on new challenges and conquer new heights in our professional and personal lives.